everybody, and welcome to Books Unbound, the podcast where we unbind books to get to their hearts with your hosts, us. It's Ariel and
Raylene. Hello.
We are here together celebrating our 5th year anniversary.
We've been together so long.
That's so beautiful. We wanted to do a little bit of a special episode for this special occasion. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to start with a little fireside chat. We're fancy now. And we are actually recording on my birthday.
Yes.
So it does feel to me like a very momentous, I'm turning 30, the podcast is turning 5.
Aww.
Like, it's crazy to think that half of my 20s were spent doing the pod.
Wow.
Which is wild.
That is crazy.
It is kind of wild. And so when we were thinking about, like, what could we do for the 5th anniversary episode that would be fun? Yeah. I mean, first we were instantly like, let's do a big Q&A.
Yeah.
Because people love asking questions and we want to, like, give you information that you're curious about. So we'll be doing a big Q&A. But then we were like, there are certain topics and questions that we think it would be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And sort of reflect on the podcast itself. And so this one's for the fans.
So, what is the first book you remember reading on the podcast?
I should have looked this up.
I know.
Did you look this up? Okay, great.
But I like to I do have a memory of those first few episodes and like what I hauled.
Yeah.
Sort of what I was reading. Like I have this image in my mind of those like early Books Unbound episodes.
Okay, maybe you should go first then.
I remember I bought Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo.
That's funny.
Like it was that era.
Yeah.
I never ended up reading that though. I would say one of the first books I remember reading is Red, White, and Royal Blue by
That's
Casey McQuiston.
hilarious.
Yeah, which is so random.
Random for us.
Really random, but that was just something I happened to be really excited about at the time when we were starting our podcast in 2019. And
God, it was a different age.
It was. Yeah, that book was huge. And I was just like, I just felt like reading it. And so I did.
Yeah.
But I would also say the one about the cats being at the end of the world, question mark?
Yeah.
The day when cats disappeared from the world.
That's it. Yes.
That one.
Totally.
That was another really early Books Unbound book for me. So those are the two that I really remember when I think back to the early days.
I'm trying to remember any book I've ever read.
Oh.
And I'm like... And I'm staring at most of the books I own as well. And I'm a little bit like, oh, wow, I don't remember. Do you happen to remember one of the early books that I read?
You know, it's funny that you ask. No. You're gazing at your shelves for a minute.
Yeah, I'm gazing at my shelves for a moment. And a lot of them do harken back to this time, like, ages ago. It feels like a different Ariel.
Yeah.
Reading different stuff. I mean, one of the questions we wanted to ask was, what's a book that feels like the first Books Unbound book? Yeah. And maybe we could talk about what we define as a Books Unbound book.
Yeah.
So, there are certain books that I feel like we become champions of. Like knights. Like if, right? Like in medieval times, like a knight is like the champion of his princess or whatever. Yeah. I feel like we become champions for certain books.
Absolutely.
And, you know, last year I really became a champion for Ballad for Sophie, where I was just like, I read this book, I couldn't get over it, and I was like, I really want people to read this. And that happens throughout the years. And, like, there will be books that I love, and I don't become a champion for them, and they don't really become a Books Unbound book. And I think the other element of that is we talk about it in a way, we talk about that book in a way that people listening want to buy it and read it too.
Yeah.
That, like, those two elements are what I think a Books Unbound book is. And one of the earliest ones I can remember, there's two that come to mind for me. One is The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating.
Ooh, yeah.
I just love that book. And I remember early on, like, talking about it a lot. And then the other one is My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Now, I don't remember when I first read that, so I don't know if that was in 2019.
Yeah.
Probably not. It was probably 2020.
Did you read it during the podcast, or did you read it before?
I think I read it on the podcast.
Okay. Interesting.
I might not have.
It could have been before that, because I don't remember. I'm trying to think back to when I bought it. I remember I originally bought a hardcover copy at a thrift store, and then for some reason decided, I don't think I care about this book, and I got rid of it. And then I rebought it later, but like I remember that was like, it felt like ages ago when I did that.
That's wild. But yeah, that was a book early on that, like, it helped us form this unsound women category that we then, I feel like, we're chasing for quite a few years. I feel like we're still kind of chasing it, but this, like, category of women losing their minds, women going crazy, women who've, like, had enough and don't want to play this game anymore. Yeah, what about you? What's an early Books Unbound book?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Convenience Store Woman definitely feels like an early one. Because I remember you had read it before me, and I remember reading it in 2020. So it wasn't 2019, like, right at the beginning of the podcast, but I feel like it was fairly early on and has followed us throughout. Which is funny, because I remember when I read it and when you read it, both of us were like, oh yeah, that was a good book, but, like, not a favorite.
Yeah.
But somehow it's the book that we, like, come back to the most.
So much.
I really need to reread that book.
I really do too.
Because I feel like we love it more than we think we do.
Convenience Store Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta revisit it. Because I do feel like that was a pioneer. Before we, like, started the podcast, I think we were both already reading some Japanese and Korean, Asian translated fiction. But it definitely we kind of became a little echo chamber of wait, you found one and then I found one, and it grew and grew.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel like that was one of the big sparkers. Yeah, because The Vegetarian I read a long time ago.
Yeah, I read it before the podcast.
Yeah, and there were a couple others. Like, What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. So there were a couple, but then the podcast really, like, emphasized us finding more of those.
Yeah.
Okay, one question that I kind of have for you is, like, how do you feel that your life has changed in the last 5 years? Like, from before the podcast to now.
Yeah.
To me, it's very fascinating how much our lives have changed.
Yeah, just, like, in every element of our lives.
Yeah, like, outside of books.
Yeah, like, we were 25. I mean, you had probably just turned 26 because it was October when we started.
Yeah, I guess I would have.
We were in that in between, but we were 25 basically when we started the podcast. And now we're 30, or I'm on the verge of 30.
Yeah.
That's actually so wild.
That is wild.
Like, so much in your life changes.
Yeah.
And, like, I remember when we started the podcast, like, I had just gone through, like, some kind of tragedies in my life. Like, I was, in a sad place. Yeah. And, like, the podcast helped me, which is kind of cool because I know the podcast has helped a lot of people through hard times.
Oh, that's cool.
And I feel like the podcast was, like, the jumping point of getting me through those hard times.
Yeah.
And then, like, we went through the pandemic all together, and it helped all of us. Like, I think doing this kept both of us sane.
Totally.
And kept us connected in a time when a lot of people were feeling disconnected. Yeah. So I feel like having the podcast during that time is so magical. Like,
I totally agree.
We did it at the perfect time somehow. Yeah. We didn't mean to.
Well, of course we couldn't know what was to come.
It was 2019, late in the year when this all started.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, just where we're at now, like, I've changed jobs since we started the podcast. I'm now working at a much better place.
Yes.
And woo! Making that money. And, like, I've been able to change my schedule so that we don't have to record the podcast on the weekends.
Yeah.
And, like, we've gone through lots of different permutations of, like, how are we going to do this
Great word.
Thank you. And, yeah, like, I feel like I've gone through a lot. I've gotten married. Did I get engaged on the, like,
yes,
podcast?
We did an episode, and I remember was near when I moved.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in the car.
Oh
remember the era where I recorded in the car?
Yeah.
Do you remember
that? About that?
Because we moved here, and my entire family was living in this office.
Yeah.
And so I had nowhere to record.
Yeah.
So I would just record in the
dark
car.
Jeep.
In the dark. It was night in the car.
We were really dedicated to this project.
We should have taken a few weeks off.
I know. We didn't know how to do that.
We didn't even consider. But I remember sitting in the car and asking you questions. Because did you get engaged in, like, November?
It was November. I don't know the exact date, but I know it was in November, yeah.
November, December. I remember, asking you questions about it and, like, you telling us the story on the pod. We definitely did an episode about it. And then I also got engaged.
That's true.
During the podcast.
Yeah.
Mine was more recent in January, but we did an episode for that as well.
Yeah.
And you're right, you've gotten married. Mm-hmm. I haven't gotten married yet.
But it's coming.
And then...
and I mean, you had just moved into this house during the podcast. Like, that went through that whole process.
Yeah,
we've been podcasting.
We both bought houses during the podcasting era.
Yeah.
So I was God.
Take us back.
So wait, we started in 2018?
2019.
2019. Okay, I remember sitting in Ottawa calling you.
Oh my gosh.
I was sitting on a picnic bench.
Yeah.
and I was about to move to BC. Is that right? Where am I imagining that I live? I'm having conflicting memories. But I'm pretty sure
it was 2018 because you moved here in 2020, right?
Yeah, but we lived in BC for a year and a half. So I guess
something like that. Math is not our forte.
Not our forte. But no, I do specifically remember sitting on a bench in Ottawa.
Okay.
It is very possible that I asked you to do the podcast and we didn't start it till months later.
Yeah.
You know, so that might be what I'm thinking.
Maybe what you're thinking.
But I really remember sitting on a park bench in Ottawa, knowing that I was going to move soon. And I asked you if you might want to do the podcast. I had started the podcast by myself when I was in my master's. And I had done a couple episodes. And I had some really cool guests on, like friends. And we had some great episodes. But I just realized it was completely unsustainable. So basically, like, I would reach out to a friend.
Yeah.
I would ask them, is there a cool book you want to read? They would tell me it. I would read it. They would read it. And then we would do a discussion episode about it. And so I think it was a good podcast. It was very different to what Books Unbound is now.
Yeah.
I think it was cool, but it just wasn't, it didn't have the like weekly rapport of like building a thing together.
It's a little bit more like a report.
Yeah,
like
totally.
A little more.
It was a little more
sterile,
serious. Yeah. And it was also just a lot of work because I had to read a book for every episode, right? In a way, and like a specific book. It couldn't just be the next book I read. And so I was also so overwhelmed with my master's, so I put it on pause. I was like, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to figure this out after I graduate. I graduated. You and I started talking again.
Yeah, we'll talk about this later at the end of this discussion, but we went through a rough patch. Because for context, we've known each other online since 2011.
Yeah.
We met for the first time in real life in 2013.
Yeah.
And so we were very good friends, but obviously from a distance, just online for many years. And then I would say I guess it was kind of in 2013 that we met and something happened. And then we kind of were like, soft friends for a few years. Like we weren't in constant contact like we are now. Like things changed with the podcast. Like I think you starting the podcast and like bringing me in for this was what like reignited our friendship in a really cool way. Like I just remember you were like, you texted me and said, can I call you? And I was like, what's this about? I was a little scared.
Yeah, Raylene and I never call, which this is kind of funny. This is a random side fact. Raylene and I never call unless it's for the podcast.
Yeah, we don't talk.
And so there was one time that I called you and I remember you answered and you were like, hello? And I was like, I'm engaged. And you were like, I'm making a tuna melt. Like, it's just bizarre when we never call. We never call. So, yes, it was weird. But I was like, I don't want to text this out. And I also know Raylene pretty well at this point. And I was like, if I text this information to her, I know she's going to say no.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be able to, like, really put in the enthusiasm, explain why I think we would do a good job together, explain why I think it would be fun. Like, you'll read it and you'll be like, nah, that's not for me.
Because also at this point, I have quit YouTube for about a year.
Yes. That's important.
Yeah, I made YouTube videos from 2011 to 2017.
Yeah.
And this is probably 2018. You're like, okay,
yeah,
hear me out.
Or early 2019.
Can I bring you back in?
Yeah, exactly. And I was really trying. It's like one of those movies where it's like trying to get a special agent back onto the force just for one last job.
I was like, I quit. I'm retired. And I got hurt too bad last time.
I was like, I need you for one more job. And I know I've said this on the podcast before, but I said to Raylene, I promise if you do it, I promise you two things. Number one, it will be fun. Yeah. We'll have fun. Yeah. And number two, we will make money.
And I was like, well, I
do need money. Like, I do believe in creative projects that are fun and like a good time, but I also believe in making money. Like, you deserve to make money when you put in a lot of work and effort. Yeah. And so I was like, you're going to be putting in hours a week, but we're going to start making money. And it's not going to be very much at the beginning, but it will grow if we put in the effort and we like show up every week and we keep doing it. And you were like, okay, we can try it. And so I remember that call. I remember hanging up. and I remember, like, being really excited. Like, I remember Connor and CJ were playing soccer or basketball or something, and I was just, like, sitting on this bench watching them and talking to you, and then I hung it up, and I was like, whoa, I feel like this could be a cool project. This could be really cool. And at that time, I was really becoming disenchanted with BookTube. I wasn't enjoying making BookTube videos very much. It was still my job. But I was like, I feel like this era is coming to an end. Yeah. But I don't want to stop talking about books because I love books. And this is why I personally was so excited by the book podcast idea. Yeah. I was like, I actually think in many ways the podcast arena makes more sense for book conversations. Yeah, because you can meander. Yeah. You're not trying to make a snappy, quick video. You're not trying to, like, have fancy editing necessarily. You're kind of just allowed to take an hour to talk. Yeah,
and you don't even need video to, like,
you don't need it. No, right? Exactly. So I was like, I feel like this could be, like, the next thing that I do with books. So I was really excited. And then we started it out. And I feel like almost instantly we were having fun. Yeah. And instantly we started to have an audience, which is a relief, because that's definitely the hardest part of launching a new project, is that you're like, is anybody listening? Right. And we were lucky because you already made video. You had people that still wanted content from you. I still had my channel up and running. And so we started to get people listening, and we started to get this really beautiful rapport with people and getting new recommendations and people chiming in. So it was just, I love that early time of the pod because it was just like, we were trying to figure it all out. Yeah. But yeah, so then I moved to British Columbia, or maybe we started when I was in BC. I should have looked at my photo roll.
Who knows?
But yeah, when did I move to BC? I think it was May 2019. So if we started in October 2019. Yeah, there you go. I bet you that I called you in Ottawa as I was about to move. Yeah. And then I was like, actually, let's wait until I get back or something. I'm trying to...
I remember where I was, too. Like, where I was living and, like, the couch I was laying on when we called.
That's so funny.
So, like, I was living in a basement suite, and I have moved, like, 3 or 4 times since then.
Yeah, same. Yeah, it's crazy. And then, eventually, like, I moved to BC, which was exciting because we were both in the same province.
Yeah. We felt closer.
We felt really close, even though we were not close at all. And then I moved to Nova Scotia and bought this house. So for me, I feel like the last 5 years have been really busy and crazy, and so much has happened. But it's been so nice to have this consistent project. I do feel like for the beginning first years, it felt to me very much like a side project. Yeah. I was like, this is a little thing I do on the... I wouldn't really even bring it up to people. Yeah. They're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I like make YouTube videos for a living or whatever.
And now, like, it's something I put on my resume.
Yeah. I would, like, people are like, what do you do? I'm like, I make YouTube videos and I have a book podcast. Yeah. Because it's a huge part of our lives. Yeah. We put a lot of time into it.
We do, yeah. And, like, people at my work know about it. Like, I haven't necessarily told people the name of it. They could obviously find it if they wanted to, but, like, that's where I am on Mondays. So people ask me, it's like, well, I'm doing my other job. Yeah. Like, I'm doing my other work.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about where we've come in the past 5 years, but where do you think the podcast is going to be in the next 5 years? What's your vision?
Great question. So we're in I do feel like we're in a very fascinating era of our lives. Yeah. Because we're moving, we're getting married.
Yeah. Life things are happening.
People could have children,
it's
right?
Possible, yeah.
That could happen on the horizon. I have thought about this. It is an existential threat to the podcast.
Honestly, I've thought about that too. Like, if I have a child, how are we going to be able to record?
I know. I have thought about this. It's a very fascinating problem. It's not a problem, you know what I mean? It's not a problem, but like...
A conundrum.
Like, my partner works in existential threat, which just means like a thing that could wipe out humanity. Pandemics, nuclear war... AI, the classics. Yeah. And I love that term. And so, you having a child is an existential threat to the podcast.
And just to make it clear, it's not happening yet.
Imagine pregnancy reveal.
That would be so shocking.
We should do that for the 5th anniversary edition. It would be so exciting.
Let's just do it.
Oh man. Okay. No, she's not pregnant. But it is something that
it is a possibility.
It's a possibility.
Yeah, in the next 5 years,
That's what
we'll
we're
turn 35.
We're talking 5 years,
Yeah.
right? We're not talking like
timeline.
this year. We're just talking in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
If we wanted to have children, it would probably happen in these next 5 years, and that would be. I don't know what would happen.
Yeah.
I feel like we
what
could.
happens when it comes.
Exactly. I could see. Actually, one of my friends asked me this. Lena. Oh. She was like, "What would happen if like Raylene for some reason wanted to stop doing the podcast, like she had a child or she wanted to take a break or whatever?" She's like, "Would you do it by yourself?" And I was like, "No,
it's not possible.
Books Unbound isn't me. Books Unbound is us."
Yeah.
And there could be this kind of goes to what we talked about in one of my favorite episodes ever, where we talked about like being old ladies.
Oh yeah.
And we're like, are we still going to be making this podcast when we're 80? I love the idea of just shifting with the times. Yeah. And a little bit, I'm like, if you have a kid and it doesn't make sense for us to have the podcast every week, but we could still do it every month.
Yeah.
Like that, we can just shift into that new schedule.
There'll be something. Because we do love doing it. That's the thing. It is a part of our lives and I don't want it to go away.
No.
So even if it's tricky, I think we'll make it work.
I think it is a priority. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like a thing that we would just flippantly be like, well, that's over. I feel like we would put in a lot of consideration about it. But other than a child, I don't really see anything that could knock it out.
Right. Because, like, we've moved a lot. So say one of us were to move again.
That wouldn't do.
Who cares?
We've done that.
Yeah.
We can make more content about that, in fact.
Exactly.
And I feel like, if you changed your job or if I changed my job, like, we would still be doing this.
Yeah.
And I feel like if our reading changed, if, like, what we like reading changes, that would not affect the podcast. Totally. And would, in fact, be really interesting. Yeah. Like, I think we could make great content about that. And we have. Like, for example, when I was in my Westerns era, that was exciting because it's like, I'm reading something new that I typically don't read. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that on the podcast. And, like, I can really see how our reading has changed over the last 5 years. Yeah. And, like, that was a thing that I had to chronicle when I was, like, mainly making book videos on YouTube as well, was, like, I used to only read YA.
Yeah.
And over the 5, 6, 7 years, it shifted into... I'm only reading adult stuff now, and like chronicling that change and learning from it is really interesting. So I do think like there isn't much that could knock us out.
Right. Here's a question.
Yeah.
What if one of us or both of us stopped reading as much? Or stopped reading completely? Let's just be crazy for a second.
Yeah, I like it.
What would happen if we stopped being into books? We just have to change the name, I guess.
Crochet Unbound.
Or Books Completely Unbound.
That's a great question. I did worry about this with your goal this year of like reading less. Yeah. I was like, but we're a book podcast.
I was reading too much.
Yeah. That's a good question. I guess that's another existential threat.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that it can exist without a reading basis.
Yeah. No, that's
like
true.
I love that the podcast is in large part just us being friends.
Yeah.
I think that's really important because that's the kind of podcasts I love listening to, where I'm just like getting to know a relationship between two people, and it's so fun to be invested in that friendship. And I love that we talk about the things that we buy, and like we do different little segments, and I love all that other stuff. But I do think that if we didn't show up basically every week, having read stuff, and actually having opinions on things that we've read, fall apart. It wouldn't have the core.
That's true. Yeah, what would we talk about?
We wouldn't have the heart of our unbinding books to get to their hearts.
No, I think you're right.
That's tough. So we can't stop reading.
But yeah, but you have also predicted that I might stop owning books and just be an e-reader person. That's fine.
That's fine.
So
we don't need
who knows? That could happen. I did buy a lot of books on this trip, so I don't think
it's not gonna happen this year.
We're not in threat of that yet.
Okay, but that kind of shifts us interestingly into our next question, which was a little bit like, how have you felt that the podcast has changed your reading? Right?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say like we were already both kind of shifting into not reading YA by the time we started, so I feel like that hasn't changed during the podcast. But I do feel like I've become a bit more adventurous.
Ooh. Interesting.
Because of things like you said, like you got into a Western era, and I was like, wait, I'll try reading True Grit, like which I never would have thought.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I don't feel like I've like read more classics or anything, so I feel like that is something that could happen still.
Yeah. Totally.
I don't know. I feel like I've just been open to trying new genres. And because we receive so many recommendations from other people, sometimes I'll be like, oh, yeah, that romance book that I never thought about. Like, I've heard so many people tell me to read that, so maybe I'll give it a try. So I do feel like it's just made me a little bit more adventurous, perhaps.
Have you heard the term the Sunday scaries?
No.
So I encountered this online at some point a couple years ago, and it's the idea of people feeling fear on Sundays because you have to go back to work on Monday.
Ooh, yeah.
I have never really experienced that because for the last 13 years, I have been self-employed. And so I do get a sense of, I do feel fear a lot about my job for sure, but not like that impending doom because of a specific time because I own all of the time. I get to decide when stuff gets done. But that being said, the podcast gives me the Sunday scaries because it'll be Sunday and I'm like, I haven't finished anything.
Right.
And if I don't finish anything right now, I won't have anything to talk about tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so I will race to finish a book on Sunday or on Monday mornings.
Yeah.
So that's changed my reading.
I guess that's true, like the patterns of reading.
Yeah.
Let me think about that.
There's like a little thing where I'm like, I've got to finish something on Monday morning. Usually I'll like realize it on Sunday, read as much as I can on that Sunday, and then Monday morning finish. I feel like 50% of the books I finish on a Monday morning.
Oh my gosh.
Because I'm like, we're recording in 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of stressful. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, the kind of like pressure to read is there.
Definitely.
It's not super powerful because we don't care. Like if you didn't finish something, it's not going to end the world, and like you can always finish something next week.
Yeah.
And we're very good at deflecting and distracting fun stories. So I feel like it all works out. But yeah, I do have that time where it's like, okay, it's Friday. I've got a couple days to finish something if I'm going to finish something. Yeah. And so, yeah, there is that little bit of, ooh, I should read something.
Pressure.
Yeah. So, obviously, we've been doing the podcast for a while.
Yeah.
And we have kind of come up with our own lingo.
Yes.
That has kind of like grown
we have
as
so
time
many
goes
terms.
On.
I think I wrote them down once.
Oh, that's a good idea. But one of my favorite bits of Books Unbound lore is that the term mashed potato book was created on episode 2.
That's wild.
We weren't planning to do that.
Yeah.
And I think it's truly wild that it happened that long ago and that it has stuck.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. But yeah, I feel like we don't have that many. Like, there's probably more terms than I realize.
Yes. Okay.
Because we create them and some of them don't stick as hard as mashed potato.
Yeah, so we should pick our favorite, right?
Yeah.
Number 1.
Oh, yeah. Read them out. And then
mashed potato book. Like you said, created very early on when I was trying to explain the idea of a book that you should have just enjoyed right away, but for some reason, and it could be lots of different reasons, but for some reason you were like, I'm gonna wait on that one. Yeah. And by the time you get to it, it's a little cold, a little damp, and a little unappealing. And you're regretting it because there was a golden time you could have read it. Yeah. But also, it's just kind of like, why am I putting this off? I love mashed potatoes. I love this Why have I been waiting? Yeah. You know?
I love that we created that one together because I came up with the mashed potato bit, but you came up with the idea and it melded together into a beautiful thing.
It's perfect. Next term is an acorn book, but I feel like this one has 2 terms. Yeah. It's the acorn book or you're squirreling away a book. Yeah. Very similar. They're the same concept. Yeah. A squirrel, as you may know, will hide its acorns and like stash them up. Yeah. And he's not worried about the stash. It's not about eating the stash right now. It's about saving the stash for later when you need the stash. Yes. So there are certain books that you buy that you don't care about reading right now. Like the idea wasn't, I have pressure to read this right now. Yeah. No, the idea is I have this now for when I want to read it.
Actually, do we have a term for I feel pressure to read this right now? Like, for example, new releases that you want to be part of the conversation. Ooh. We need a term for that.
Yeah. We
can think about that.
Let me think on that. I can think of something.
I know, you're really good at the idea thing.
Oh, drive-by diner book.
I love that one.
Classic. Yeah. This is because I used to drive by this pho place, and then in another place that I lived, I used to drive by this diner, and every time I drove past it, I was like, damn, I should check that out. Yeah. And then I would forget about it.
Never do, yeah.
And so these are these books that you see in bookshops all of the time. Every time you see it in the bookshop, you're like, I feel like I'm interested in that. Yeah. But then you don't buy it. Yeah. And then you forget about it.
Because you don't have it close by.
Yeah. And then the next time you go to the bookshop, you're like, I've been thinking about that. And then you forget about it. And you do that a couple times, and then eventually you probably buy it. That's such a good one. Dream books. I wrote that down, but I don't remember that that's a thing.
I don't know what that means.
That's not an official term.
No, I don't know what that is.
Charcuterie board reading. This is important to me.
This is really good.
They're very food-based.
I love food.
My favorite food is a charcuterie board. Like, I love to pick. I love to snack. I think my parents love this as well. Like, growing up, sometimes for dinner, we would have a little party. And so that just meant that my parents would, like, cut up cheese and veggies and, like, delis and pickles, like, stuff like that, and just put them all out on a tray, and we would just pick and eat.
Oh, my gosh.
I love that. Yeah. I love a charcuterie. I mean, we ordered a charcuterie the first night you were here.
It's true.
And I love delightful. A charcuterie. And so basically it really reflects the way that I read often, which is not so much this year because I'm like on a war
You're really
path.
Focusing this year.
I'm trying to read a lot, but like usually I will pick and choose, and I'll read a little bit of this book, I'll put it down, and I'll read a little bit of this book, I'll put it down, and I'll start another one, and then I'm like, I'm gonna go back and finish that one actually. No, now I'm back on this one, and so it's just like letting yourself be really free. And not worrying about, like, you start something, you have to finish.
Yeah.
And then you can move on to the next one.
And that's how I usually read. And do we have a term for that?
For that kind of more linear reading?
More, like, strict.
Yeah. I don't think we do have a term. We got some stuff we gotta think of.
I know.
The Kat Dennings effect.
This is
Christ.
Yeah.
This is when you haven't read a book, but you are excited about it. So you mention it to someone. And that could be a book you've just bought. It could be a book you've heard of. It could be a book you've seen in a shop. You mention it to someone, and in a weird turn of events, it's rare, but in a weird turn of events, it happens. They read the book before you read the book.
Yeah.
Because they kind of saw what you said as a recommendation.
Yeah. And they just went for it.
And they went for it. They bought it. They read it. You then read the book. And you don't like it.
And so you regret.
Recommending it because you're like, wow, I wouldn't have recommended that actually probably. Like, there's so many other books in that genre I would have picked over it.
Yeah.
This is so called because we found out that Kat Dennings listens to the pod.
Yeah.
Hi, Kat.
Hi.
And she gave us an incredible recommendation of The True Deceiver this year, which might actually...
We'll never forget about that.
No, I think it might be my favorite book of the year.
Oh my God.
Totally started me on this Tove Jansson Extravaganza. I literally have a Moomin's mug now because of Kat Dennings. Yeah. But she read the Kamigawa Food Detectives because I hauled it. Yeah. And then I read it, and I didn't hate it. I just was very neutral on it.
It wasn't
and I was
as good as you hoped.
I was like, damn, that wasn't as good as a lot of the like Japanese books we read in that genre.
Yeah.
Brutal.
That's a good one though. That's such a good term.
Painful.
Yeah.
The final one that we have is a turnip book.
Oh,
Can you remind me what this one is? It's because of our pin, right?
Yes. So a turnip book is a book that like you want to read, you feel like you should read.
It's healthy.
It's a healthy book. It's got good nutrition. And this this is often a classic or some kind of like informational book, something that's going to help you or like advance you in some way or another. Yeah. But it's scary. Yeah. You know, it's like a scary book. Like, you know, Moby Dick is a very long book.
That's a turnip book.
You know, that's a turnip book that it's like, oh, I know I should read that. Yeah. But I'm kind of scared. And like maybe you kind of don't want to read it a little bit. So it's like the flip side of a mashed potato book where it's like a book that you know you should read or you know you want to read, but you're like a little bit off put by it for whatever reason. And because like turnips aren't as good as mashed potatoes.
No, totally. You know? But they are good for you.
They are good, and they're not bad. They don't taste bad. Let me put that
But you're not going to often choose a turnip.
Exactly. Exactly.
So true.
So what is your favorite one out of all of those?
I think the Kat Dennings one, because it's so... The Kat Dennings effect, it's potent. It's potent.
It's very specific.
It's so specific. Maybe because it's top of mind, like it just happened this year. Yeah.
And it makes you maybe a little more wary about like recommending things you
a little. Totally.
Especially someone with a huge platform might give it a shout out.
And I do think though my favorite term is mashed potato books because
it's a classic.
It just feels so close to our heart, mashed potato wise, and I have seen it kind of catch on like wildfire.
It is, and you know, people
it's
know
verbal wildfire. And so I love that it's kind of like become its own thing.
I agree. I will say that I also really love drive-by diner books.
It's good.
We don't bring that one up very often,
No.
but that is something that happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I have a lot of books like that, and I think I've probably bought a couple of them this week because I was like, you know what? I'm on vacation. It's time to do it. And so I finally pulled the trigger on those books. But yeah, I think that one is such a funny one because I also do it with cafes. There's this little bakery close to my house.
Yeah.
Every time I drive past, I'm like, I should go there.
Yeah.
Never been there.
How about for the one that you just suggested? You were like, we need a term for when you buy a book and you now want to be a part of the conversation.
Yes.
For me, that is currently Intermezzo by Miss Sally Rooney.
Yeah.
I bought it and I really hope to read it within the next 6 months because I want to read it during the hype time and also because I bought it in hardcover. And I hate when I don't get to a book until it's already in paperback and I'm like, why did I spend the extra $20?
Why did I do that? Yeah.
What about it's like a kettle book? Because you've like pushed the button on the kettle.
Oh my God.
And you feel like you need to finish it before the like steam, the whistle.
Yeah.
Before the whistle happens. And if the whistle happens and you miss it.
Yeah.
And it all shuts off, then it's gonna go cold.
That's good. That's good, yeah, because you want to read it while it's still heating up.
You want to be while it's boiling. While it's hot. You're trying to read it while it's hot.
Ooh, I like that.
And with your kettle, like with my kettle, for example, you push the button, it boils.
Yeah.
And I've done this before. I put it to boil. And then, it snaps off.
Yeah.
And then I've forgotten about it.
And then
an hour later, I go back and it's cold. And I'm like, I gotta boil it again. What do you think about that?
I think that's good.
We'll go with that.
I think that's good. Kettle.
A new term.
Kettle books.
So, yeah, did you say which one your favorite was?
Drive-by.
Right.
And mashed potato, of course.
It's
we
the
could
classic.
never forget that. That one's always going to be up there because it just works perfectly.
It's just
and it's easy to understand when you explain it to someone. They're kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
They're like, I kind of get it.
It's a weird choice for it to be called mashed potatoes, but it makes sense to me.
All right, our final question for this fireside chat.
What do we got, friend?
I want to know, the people want to know, is there any juicy behind the scenes gossip that people might not be aware of?
Oh my
For
gosh.
the Books Unbound lore. Have we ever had a fight?
Yeah, I think we should start there. So we had like what I would call a tiff.
Yes.
Maybe you'd call it something else, but I think it was a tiff.
I think it was a tiff.
We were teenagers.
We never fought.
No.
I don't think we've ever had a fight.
We've never yelled at each other.
No,
we've
no.
never been like, you did something wrong. You did something wrong. No, We've never like really been mad at each other, but I think we felt sad at each other.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. We both felt sad at each other.
We felt sad at each other. So there was a bit, like I mentioned, we met IRL in 2013 for the first time. It was August probably, or like late July, early August. We went to VidCon.
Yes.
And we met, and it was glorious.
Yes.
And
it was very intense.
Yeah.
Like it was 5 days, I think.
Yeah, it was like 5 days to a week of us and 4 other people. All meeting for the first time.
But like, you and I already were closer-ish online.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt like it was us two and our other friends.
Yeah, totally.
And we just hang out we were 18.
Yeah.
So we hung out so intensely for a week. We really
non-stop.
bonded. It was like,
when we left each other at the airport, we hugged. We were weeping. And we both had to go to opposite ends of the airport. I remember this. We just looked at each other with tears in our eyes. And we were like, goodbye. Like,
it was
devastating.
It was very emotional.
Yeah.
It was a very powerful and emotional, beautiful friendship
Emotions
time.
were high.
Emotions were high.
It was beautiful. So like
I felt like I had made my best friend.
Exactly. Like we really, really bonded. And then I went home, and literally a week after that, I met Kyle, my now husband. We've been together for 11 years. So,
and it is important to me.
Yeah.
I knew Raylene first.
You did.
So in my mind, I have a little priority over Kyle, but go on.
Yes, so I met Kyle, and people who have, been in intense relationships or like romantic relationships, you know that when you like meet that person, you often do nothing but think about them.
Tunnel vision.
Spend time with them.
Tunnel vision.
You don't do anything else. And that is what happened. And like we mentioned, we were 18.
Yes.
So I was young and in love.
There was hormones.
There was a lot going on. And so I went tunnel vision on Kyle, and I ghosted Ariel. Like, I pretty much stopped texting you. We stopped talking for a bit.
For like 3 months.
And you were hurt.
I was hurt.
You were very hurt. And I remember thinking, like, what the heck, man? Like, get over it.
Like, okay, yeah, because you're being very kind, which I really appreciate. Because you're telling it kind of how it felt to me.
Yeah.
Where I was like, we started this beautiful
now I understand
friendship.
where you're coming from.
Yeah. But basically, you ghosted me for a few months.
Yeah.
And I really bonded with another one of our friends that was
yeah.
like on that trip, and we were both really sad. Like we were like, this is so confused. It was emotionally confusing, I think. Yeah. Also, we were babies, so we were dumb.
Because we were all like in love as friends.
Exactly.
You know? And
exactly.
so it felt like I was breaking up with you.
Yeah, I think it did. And so we were like, I don't get what happened. Like, we were so close, and we had all these ideas. Like, we were gonna read these things. And we had like these little ideas for things we wanted to do. And then you were just gone. And so we were really like sad. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to tell her that I'm sad.
Yeah.
Which I think is a mature thing to do. I'm glad that I did that because I was like,
I think it worked.
I was like, I am not a YA teen who is not going to communicate my feelings.
Yes, no.
I was like, I am going to communicate what I'm feeling, and I'm feeling hurt, and I'm feeling sad, and I'm feeling like disappointed that like this happened after we had such a beautiful week.
Totally.
And so I messaged that to you. Yeah. But at the same time, while I think it was the right thing to do, it was a very intense thing to do.
Yeah.
And it was kind of crazy, like...
I felt like I was being attacked.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like, that's the flip side of it, where you were like, what?
I know, I was like, I just met the love of my life and you're yelling at me? Like, what's happening? For me, it came out of nowhere.
Yes, exactly, because you were having this whole beautiful thing, and which I didn't understand until much later, where I was, because I never had, like, that hard of a falling in love thing. Yeah. So I don't think I appreciated what was going on your side. Yeah. And so I sent you that message, and then we kind of fell out.
Yeah, we fell out for a bit. We just kind of stopped talking. Because I was like, she's a little clingy. Like, that was what I thought at the time. Now I'm like, how rude.
I like that. I love that.
I just remember thinking, like,
she's a little clingy.
Like, does she have another friend?
Yeah, like maybe she should chill.
Yeah, I was a little like, okay, calm down.
And you know what? I didn't really have another friend.
Yeah, and that's totally
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But like, I think I probably was a little clingy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is why it was a falling out. There was a lot of emotions going around.
There was a lot. And yeah, so then we kind of just split up for a little while. But then we came back together.
Yes.
Because I don't know exactly how it happened, but like...
I don't remember.
We saw each other at VidCon in 2015, 2016, and we were like good friends.
Yeah,
then,
and it started to rebuild.
It started to come back. We build back, brick by brick.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I went to visit you in BC. Yeah. In 2015, I think. Remember? Oh. Wow. I have this really early photo of you.
Yes, it was 2015. Because I know it was our first
apartment.
Suite.
Yes, totally.
That's true. So yeah, you came to see me.
I came to see you, and I feel like that was a big recovery for us.
Yeah, we made some funny videos.
Yeah, we made some really funny, cute videos, and then also after that, you quit videos. Yeah. And I remember you talking to me about that, where you were like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, there was a lot of good reasons why you stopped. And that kind of hurt our friendship as well, just because it's hard to have an internet friendship if one person isn't making content anymore.
Yeah, because the way we became friends online
was exactly.
That you would make a video and I would comment on it, and then I would make a video and you would comment on it. And that's how we like really connected.
That's how we met. Yeah. Was just, I don't know who found each other's videos first, I don't know. But one of us saw each other's videos and commented on it, and I clicked on your channel and I saw your videos and I was like, oh, she's also 16 and in Canada and making book videos and reads the same stuff I read. So it really... That was how our friendship started. So when you stopped making videos, I know that it was a little bit like we stopped talking as much.
A little rocky, yeah.
And then the podcast brought us back.
Brought it all back.
Have we had any other juicy dramas? I would like to tell them about the espresso mugs.
I think you should, take the floor.
So for the last year, we have been trying to make mugs. Yeah. I don't even really want to talk about the delays that have happened. It's been absolutely insane and unreasonable. The mugs are going to be worth it. They are going to be beautiful. Yeah. And we're really excited to release them. Yeah. Hopefully in the next few years. But the road has been rocky. Yeah. And finally, this was months ago. A couple months ago, we finally got a message from the distributor, and they were like, we've got the mugs. They're looking really good. They're just like you guys wanted. Yeah. And I think they sent us a photo, and we were like, those look awesome. We were like, go ahead and print them. The next day, or a few hours later, we got another email from the distributor, and they were like, I am so sorry. we did not realize that the mugs we were ordering were in fact espresso cups.
Little tiny.
And they're like this small when we had designed and pictured mugs. And we were like, oh my God, we almost just ordered 300 tiny espresso cups. And to you guys, we would have just pretended that was always the idea.
Yeah.
Like, if it had happened, we would have just rolled with it. But we were like, we were this close to disaster. And thankfully, the distributor caught it and was like, we're so sorry. But what that meant was we basically had to go back to school.
We had to start all over.
Oh my God.
And now, like, we're getting somewhere. Let me just say the update is that we're getting somewhere.
We got an email today that seemed pretty hopeful.
So,
do I seem hopeful to you?
Ash slumps over in a chair.
All right, the final one that we wanted to mention that isn't, it's not gossip. Well, I guess it's gossip.
Just a fun behind the scenes possibility that never happened.
There was a small window of time where we thought we would live together.
That would have been so fun.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, because you lived in BC. I lived in BC.
Yep.
We're like, what if we just found a place like somewhere in the vicinity?
Yes.
And we could all live together as a happy family.
So you weren't loving where you were living.
Yeah.
And this is before the pandemic. So this would have been 2019 or very early 2020 or something. We were like thinking, my family thought we were going to live in BC for the rest of our lives. And then we got whatever it's called when your landlord kicks you out because they want to sell the house you're living in. We got kicked out of our house illegally. And we were like, oh my God, what do we do? And that's when this desperation was like, I was like, that's it. I'm sick of moving. I never want to move again. I'm buying a house.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, I can't afford to live in British Columbia. And so I started looking abroad and I was like, Nova Scotia. That's my place. And so I bought this house. But the backstory to that is we thought we were going to live in BC forever. Right. So before we were kicked out, illegally, before we were kicked out, we were like, okay, we should get an apartment. And like us, the kids, should like all live together. And so it would have been me and Connor and CJ, and we were looking at apartments in Kelowna. And then we were like, wait, we could do it together.
You could save us from our
situation.
Pull us out of our situation.
And so we were like, you guys could move with us. And we started looking at places, and like we actually started looking at places and linking them to you and stuff.
Yeah, and we're like, there's an airport nearby that Kyle could work at.
Yeah,
like,
there was all these things.
Logistics.
And then it fell apart.
It just didn't happen.
And it slipped from our grasp.
It's funny. You know, I've never lived with friends before.
Me neither.
I always wanted to, though.
Yeah, it seems fun in the shows.
I know, it seems fun, but you know, it probably isn't as fun as it looks.
We probably would have killed each other.
It's probably for the best.
So, there you have it. There's some juicy gossip from Ariel and Raylene and Books Unbound. I really enjoyed this walk down memory lane.
This was really nice.
Reflecting on the podcast.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to do now is a Q&A, and these questions were submitted by patrons?
Yes. And people on Discord, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah,
who are patrons?
I guess it was all patrons then. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So we're going to go and do that. All right. We are now going to be doing our Q&A, where we answer your lovely questions, and Raylene has them here on her phone for us to peruse.
Yes, we've got some fun ones, some like meaningful questions, and some goofy ones. So
perfect.
It's not in any particular order. We're just going to start at the top. So this first one is from Maxwell Hyde, who says, updates on Raylene's yoga journey and tips to stay consistent. I'm so inspired.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, the update is that I now wake up at 5:30 every day.
Yikes.
So that I can do
Scary.
so I can do 30 minutes of yoga instead of 10. I would say, like, what I did was that I just started waking up a little bit earlier than normal so that I could do 10 minutes of yoga every day. It's pretty low pressure. Like, time-wise, my thing was always like, oh, it takes so long. And if you just kind of take it easy, just do little steps, do even just like a 5-minute meditation in the morning or something, whatever it may be, to fit your schedule. And then you can start taking it. I mean, it doesn't have to be in the morning. That's just my journey, but you can do it at night as well. But that's just what I've been doing. I've just been trying to expand my yoga so that I can have more time, because the more you get into it, the more you like doing it, honestly, and the more you want to do it. It doesn't feel like a chore. I'm like excited to get out of bed so that I can stretch because my body aches.
Because we're 30.
Exactly. And your body is more achy in the morning is what I've learned. And like, it's easier to do yoga at night because your body's warmed up. You're kind of naturally stretched already. So it's just up to whatever you want to do. But that's my tip. Just take it easy, take it slow, build it up.
Cool.
Okay, this one is from Sheila, who says, Kiss, Marry, Kill.
Oh my god.
Cheryl Strayed, Haruki Murakami, and George R.R. Martin. This one made me laugh because it's so unhinged.
Kiss, marry, kill. Wow, that's complicated.
Okay, I'm gonna kill George. I'm sorry.
I agree. That's for sure.
I have to kill George.
I have not read those books, so I'm not emotionally attached in any way.
Yeah.
He's also I think he's the oldest of that group.
Yes.
So we're wasting the least years of someone's life.
That's true.
Which is scary. I feel like I would marry Cheryl Strayed because I feel like she's learned so much over her relationships that I feel like she's probably a really great wife.
Totally. I was gonna say I would marry Haruki.
Oh, why?
Because he just seems nice. And he is older as well, so I feel like he would just be like a nice person to live with. And, you know, he's written a lot of books, so he probably has a lot of money.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to smooch Haruki.
You smooch Haruki, I'll smooch Cheryl. All right, Lenny says, Ariel, in episode 49, you state that one day you will publish a graphic novel, especially after your current disappointments in graphic novels. How are you proceeding? Is it still on your mind?
It's always on my mind.
Ooh.
I know what it's about.
Oh, cool.
And I've been working on it in my mind.
Oh.
I'm like, what else do I want to say? I don't want to say anything.
No, it's cool to know that you're still thinking about it.
Because I don't want to like say something and then it ends up being different or whatever.
Right.
But I have an idea that I think is really good.
Okay.
And I think it works specifically as a graphic novel.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
So yes, it's still in the works.
That is awesome. Okay, Abby says, if you could only read a single genre for each of the 4 seasons, which would you pick for each?
Fascinating.
Yeah.
In the winter, I will read letters.
Ooh.
That feels cozy and like candlelighty, you know? In the spring, I will read nonfiction biographies. Why? I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
Summer, I will read Japanese or Korean translated fiction because they're usually set in summer and they're hot.
Yeah.
And then in the fall, I will read ghost stories because I love ghosts.
Oh, that's so fun. I feel like your answer is going to be better than mine.
No.
Okay, I would say in the winter, I will read classics. I just feel like there's something old about winter.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that fits the vibe. Sitting by a fireplace, reading a big Count of Monte Cristo or whatever, that just feels right. I would say for me, spring would be my Asian translated lit phase
that makes
because
sense.
I think of cherry blossoms. No matter what the book is,
Yeah.
I just imagine cherry blossoms when I'm reading those. So that would be my pick for that. I would say summer is probably memoirs.
Oh, cool.
I don't know. That just fits for me for some reason.
Very cool.
And fall would just be general spooky or horror. If I had to pick like a genre, I would just say horror because I do really enjoy horror books and I love a slasher. I love murder. And yeah, maybe not so much ghosts, but the spooky vibes overall I would pick. Cool. Good question. That's fun.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Okay, Lucy asks, would you rather only buy secondhand books from thrift stores / charity shops, etc., or books new, but they have to be released in the last 5 years? And this is if money is no object.
New.
Yeah.
I love new books.
Yeah.
I love a new and used bookshop. I think that is the best of both worlds because if you have like all the new books to pick from, new releases, you got like your finger on the pulse a little bit.
Yeah.
But then if you have a used section, you can also peruse and usually find a couple gems.
Yeah.
But if I have to pick, I think I would. But then, does that mean you never get a classic again?
Yeah. But you already have a lot of classics.
Yeah, I do have more than I'll ever read.
That's the thing. If you think about where we're currently at, I don't think you need any more old books.
That's true.
You know? Okay, and my answer is similar to yours. I would also say new for a couple of reasons. One, you can get books from the library still. So if you want to read a classic, you can just go get it from the library. You don't have to purchase it.
True.
But for similar reasons to you, like I do love new books. And as we've discovered in the past few years, we're always reading books from the 2020s, like from the past 4 years. And so that means something.
I don't want to give that up.
No, exactly. Because you could still buy like new books from the thrift store, but it's so much harder to find them.
Yeah.
And another reason is that I do already buy a lot of books from the thrift store, and a lot of times they're books I don't need. I buy them because they're cheap.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would rather have the freedom to just like buy all the new books I can because money no object. That's a really cool rule. Thank you. So I just love shiny new books.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I think there's a loophole to your classics question. If they did a re-release.
That's what I was going to say. If there's like a new copy of the bell jar.
It's a 2024 edition.
I feel like you get to buy it.
I think that's a loophole. I think that's a loophole that we should exploit. Okay. Sarah says, the pod is obviously called Books Unbound. Have you ever had any books fall apart on you?
Yes.
I know that you have.
I have, let me grab it so that I can show you. I have two.
Oh my gosh.
I have two that come to mind. While I find it, do you have any?
Oh, actually, I guess the closest thing I have was I lent my brother a book when we were younger. I was like 15 and he was 12. And it didn't fall apart, but I remember he broke the spine.
Oop.
And that broke my heart. I could not believe that he did that. I, out of spite, went to a thrift store and bought him a copy that was so ugly.
Oh my God.
And it was like taped, falling apart, and I was like, this is the one you get to read from now on.
Oh my God.
I was petty.
One of mine is a Harry Potter book, which we won't talk about because boo, JK.
Mine was a Harry Potter book too.
Yeah. But basically, I know that it's at the beginning of chapter 8, Potion Master.
Oh my God.
That page just keeps falling out. But this is my other one. This is God Rest You, Mr. Rosewater. It's completely fallen apart. The glue of the binding, for anyone who's not listening or who's not watching, this book is no longer being held together.
It's being fanned out like a paper fan.
Yes, it's like a paper fan, exactly. And like, the pages are numbered, of course, so I could always put it back together, but it is like, if it fell, it would all of the pages would be out of order.
It would be a mess.
The two covers are not attached anymore, the back and the front, and I'm missing part of the spine. I mean, it was in bad condition when I got it.
Yeah.
It was in terrible condition when I got it, but it was like $1 or something, and I was like, that's fine, I'll just grab it. And because it matched my copy of Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. But yeah, it's completely fallen apart.
Do you think you'd ever restore it? Like, put it back together? Is that something you think you could do?
That's a good question. I do think I could do that, actually. Yeah. I think I
give it a cool new cover.
I have the know-how.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that it's like this.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. It's
just wild. You don't even have anything to hold it together? Like, no elastic band, nothing?
No.
Zero we're talking to. I do like that too. Okay, Megan says, my car has the Snack Time Children's album from the Bare Naked Ladies stuck in the CD player.
Oh.
If there was one album and one audiobook which were stuck in your car forever, what would you want it to be?
Great question. My last car was a 1997 Jeep Wrangler at two-door. Sport TJ. And it could not have Bluetooth or anything. It was only CDs. So I did for a long time have just play CDs, and I still have CDs in the car. And the one that I play the most is Oh My Heart by Mother.
That's gonna be my answer.
It's a perfect album.
Yeah, it's my favorite album of all time.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anything will ever top that for me. Like I love every single song. Know them all forwards and backwards.
Yeah.
I know, it's actually funny. I was sitting in the back seat of your Jeep yesterday and I saw your little Oh My Heart CD tucked into the back. And I was like, aw. For audiobook, I don't know what audiobook I would want to be hearing constantly. I guess something long so that you can get a lot out of it.
I'm going to do On Writing by Stephen King. Just because I've heard it a couple times and I keep liking it. So I feel like I'll probably continue to want to listen to it, but I wouldn't want an
No, I wouldn't either. I don't know. I'm just going to say Wild by Cheryl Strayed.
That's cool.
It would be nice to have like a story that I love read by the person who wrote it.
Maybe Tiny Beautiful Things could be
Tiny Beautiful Things would be good.
But I've never heard that on audio.
No,
Did she read it?
I have no idea. But that would be a good one because then if somebody's even just like in your car, you're like, let's just listen to this one.
One little story.
One little story.
Yeah.
That's kind of perfect. Like a little podcast. Okay, Jennifer says, would you rather live near each other so you could see each other as often as you'd like, but never do the podcast again?
Oh, that's mean.
Or, I know this is the meanest one I've got. Or never see each other again in real life, but keep doing the podcast. That is the cruelest question someone could ask.
That's really mean. Okay, I guess we're just assuming that, like, if we live together, you would have a job you loved, Kyle would have a job you loved, so I don't have to think, like, by moving you out to Nova Scotia, you lose your jobs or something.
Yeah,
like, we're just assuming that everyone is happy with their work situation. Yeah. And I am assuming you would move here, because I feel like I love my house more than you love your house, so I don't want to move. Okay, so I think basically I would choose that we get to be friends in real life.
I agree with that. Because we've never really had that.
No.
That's the other thing. Like, we have had an online or distant friendship for 13 years. Yeah,
13
like
years.
The whole time we've known each other. And I think it would be really magical for us to be able to hang out. And we wouldn't need the podcast. I mean, we could maybe start a different podcast.
Yeah.
Nobody said we couldn't.
You and these loopholes. I like this creative thinking. No, I totally agree. I think that, okay, so you've been here now almost a week.
Yeah.
And we're doing a lot of stuff, right? Because it's your vacation, so I'm trying to like give you a full itinerary. But most evenings we're watching a movie or we're playing a board game or something, and I'm like, I have thought to myself, God, if Raylene lived like around the corner and you could just come over once or twice a week and we'd all have like a drink and play a game, that would be so nice. And I like that, we're doing it now, but it's so concentrated. Like we're just doing so much. I'm like, imagine if this could be casual.
If we could be more leisurely, it would be so nice.
Yeah, it would be so nice. And I think that it would be really, really beautiful if we could just hang out. But instead we have to do like a week of intensity every 2 years, and it's just like, I do love the podcast. We're not saying we don't love the podcast, but I guess like
I love our friendship more.
I was gonna say it's kind of like you're asking us friendship or podcast. I'm like, I guess the friendship, like the podcast wouldn't be good if we didn't have the friendship.
It's true,
right?
But I agree. Yeah. It would be nice to be able to see you more often.
Yeah.
That's a good question though. Now you know how much we love each other. Meredith says, inspired by Ariel's corporate bookshop rage, do you guys have any books you keep around even though you know you will never read them?
Okay, so this is in reference to I saw a bookshelf at a bookshop that was called like books you pretend to read.
Yeah.
Which I didn't like that. I feel like that's a weird thing for a bookshop to promote. Yeah. I don't know. Are there books I keep around that I think I'll never read? No. In my delusional mind, I think I'll read all of the books. Like, I don't buy them. I've never bought a book because I just thought, this is pretty.
Yeah.
And I want it to sit at home. Because I feel like that is a little strange. I have definitely, every book that I buy, I think I'm going to read.
Yeah,
or I hope to read. Or I would like to read. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely have some books that I know I won't read in the next 10 years. Like, I just know that I'll keep getting distracted. Like, I'm not distracted, but, like, I'll just always prioritize something else.
Yeah.
And, like, those are books, like, for example, Les Miserables. I started reading that book when I was in grade 12. So that was 2012. So that was many years ago.
Yeah.
I still haven't finished it, and I will have to reread from the beginning. And I just know, like, I do want to read it. Yeah. It just isn't going to happen anytime soon. Yeah. So, like, I definitely plan to read all of my books similarly to you. Like, there's no reason to own it unless, I mean, maybe I have a couple of cat books that are kind of just like, that's just a weird book I own. Yeah. Like the Meowmorphosis. I don't know if I'll ever read that. I guess that's my answer. I don't know if I need to read that, you know? Adrian says, if a favorite author died with an incomplete book written, would you rather read their unfinished book or their finished book that was completed by someone else?
Unfinished.
Yeah, that was my answer too.
It feels weird.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing that happens. Like, the one that comes to mind for me is Dune, which I have not read. I've never read a Dune book, but the author, Frank Herbert, passed away before he finished his series, and so his son, Brian, finished it. And this is Connor's favorite, like, these are his favorite books, and he doesn't like the Brian ones. And I'm like, well, yeah, because it's a completely different writer. Yeah. Like, why would you? It's such a weird thing to do. Yeah. Like, if you have, often, I feel like they have notes that are left.
Yeah, like, did he know what was going to happen?
Yeah, like, include the notes. Like, publish whatever was left. And so the notes, closure. And so people, and the notes, and just be like, he obviously thought that this would happen and this would happen. He just hasn't. He had an outline, but he didn't finish it. Yeah. And this is what you got. Like,
I agree with that.
I feel like
just leave it.
Yeah,
leave it alone. Okay, Rachel says, would you rather get rid of your entire library and start again? Rude. You can buy any new books you want, or only keep your current library for the rest of your life. That is tough.
This is a mean question, too.
It's another mean one.
Because I guess I could, like, the idea is I could probably just rebuy everything.
Well, exactly. This is another money, no object situation.
Yeah, I could probably rebuy basically everything I own.
But do you own anything that's irreplaceable?
But that's what I mean. Like, I have a first edition Animal Farm.
Yeah.
I don't want to get rid of that.
I think you should keep your collection, personally.
I have a lot of cool signed books.
Yeah.
I have a book Michelle Obama signed.
You know what? And I own a lot of cool copies of The Great Gatsby that would be very hard to find again.
Yeah!
And one, I actually have like a manuscript version of it, which I can't remember the name of the website, but you can buy these really cool, like big slipcase copies, and they're limited edition. Like, there's only like 300 of these or something. So I might not be able to get that back.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep my collection.
I think I'm going to keep my collection. I have lots to read here.
Yeah.
So I could happily read these for the rest of my life. And of course, I could borrow books or something.
And reread,
I'm sure,
you know, we're happy to do all that. Oh, this is a cute one from Christina. Do you each have a favorite episode of the podcast you've recorded?
Oh.
Or a favorite memory while recording?
That's funny. Favorite episode. How many have we done? Like 260?
260-ish, yeah.
So there's a lot.
Yeah.
And they kind of do blur together, I guess. But
I just had a memory come to mind.
Yeah, I love the one where we talked about being 80. I just thought that was really cute and funny. I love the read and confession episodes.
Ooh.
I just find those to be really fun and entertaining and interesting.
Yeah.
As for memories, I remember when we were recording and you had your fire alarm.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was a funny occurrence.
And I was texting you like, record while you're
like a podcaster.
outside. I'm like, we can make this a juicy episode.
Yeah, that was good. I also will say, like, I really loved, like, the We're Engaged episodes. I feel like those were just so happy.
So cute.
Yeah, those are really joyful episodes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I feel like anytime something really special happened, those are the really good episodes. But yeah, as far as like wacky memories, that fire alarm.
Wasn't there another one?
I feel like there was something else like that.
Something that got interrupted.
Did like the power go out or something?
Yeah, I think the power went out.
There's a lot of interesting things. A lot of interesting things. Remember that time when you fell in your well?
Yes, I do remember that. Yes, I do.
Oh my gosh. Oh, here's a cute one that kind of harkens back to the collection question. This is from B. Sen, who says, what are your oldest books or books in your collection? So either ones you've had the longest or like they're physically the oldest.
Great question. I guess the first edition Animal Farm that I have is from 1949? 1947? It doesn't matter. Do I have something older than that? I'm not sure. I have this edition of Ariel that my friend gave me a few years ago, which is very cool. This is the first book that Penguin ever published. Did you know?
No.
Yeah, the first book that they ever published is titled Ariel.
And that one looks like it's falling apart too.
That's just a fun fact. Yes, this really is falling apart. Do I have a year of publication? Okay, so this is not a first edition. This was published in 1937, though.
That's pretty cool.
So that's older than my Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Do I have one that's older than this? I don't think I have any books from the 1800s.
Yeah, I don't really have any antique books.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
So I was going to answer this question more as like the book I've owned the longest. And I think for me it's probably The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak.
Oh, cool.
I remember buying this book when I was 11. I went to a bookstore I was on a vacation with my friend and her family. We went to this weird little cafe bookshop, and I had never heard of The Book Thief because I was 11. This was before, Goodreads and all this stuff. I was just like, wow, that book looks really cool. I opened it up, flipped through it, and saw that it had pictures, and I was like, I'm gonna buy this. It was only $11 or whatever, like brand new, and I have carried that copy with me ever since. Like, it's beat up, like more than any of my books are, and it just like holds a special place in my heart. So
probably my oldest one on my shelves is Go Dog Go.
Ooh.
One of me and my dad's favorite books, and I probably got that when I was like 6.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I don't have any of my childhood books anymore. Like, I've gotten rid of them. Okay. So that was a crazy thing that I did probably as a teenager. I was like, I don't need these picture books anymore.
I'm never gonna have a kid.
Yeah. Get these out of here. Luckily, everything is rebuyable, so it is okay. This next question from Annie says, would you rather be trapped in a library for a month containing only books from the 1800s or trapped in a library containing only books from 2024?
Wow. That's a good one. The 1800s. What do I care about from the 1800s? I mean,
Frankenstein?
The Brontes.
Yeah.
It would take me a month to read Jane Eyre alone. Actually, I'll do that one. Because I think of myself as someone who is well versed in period dramas.
Yeah.
I've seen most of them, and I love them. And my favorite period drama of all time is probably the Jane Eyre edition with Ruth Wilson and Toby Stephens. I love that. But I've never actually read Jane Eyre. I've never read Wuthering Heights. I haven't read The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. I haven't read Agatha Gray. Is that what it's called?
Agnes,
thank you. Agnes Gray. I haven't read any of these.
Right.
And so I would spend a month doing the Brontes.
Yeah.
Just like reading all of the Brontes. I feel like that would be really cool.
That's a great answer. I wasn't sure how I was going to answer this, but you made it clear for me.
Okay.
Because the question is for a month. It's not like this is forever.
No, it's a month.
I would do the same thing because it's one of those things where you're like, if you're put in a room and you have nothing else to do, then you finally have to do the thing.
Yeah.
And like for me, I can't think of a specific book right now, but there's definitely books from the 1800s that I'm like, just do the thing. I mean, like The Count of Monte Cristo is probably a prime example. Like, It would probably take me longer than a month to read it, but that would be my chance to like get started, you know? Or Les Mis. Like that would be my chance to finally dive in because I have nothing else pulling me away. No shiny 2024 memoirs. So good question. I really like that.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
Rachel asks, did you think Mashed Potato Book would catch on with listeners as much as it did? It's kind of a throwback to our discussion before.
Yes.
Because it's verbal wildfire.
I knew it would be verbal wildfire. No. No, absolutely not.
It was a joke. Like, it was just a big passing joke, basically.
It was a joke that we were making in the moment, but I'm glad that it's caught on.
Me too.
Because it means that we did tap into something.
Exactly. It feels good to have made a mark in some way or another. If that's all we do, I'm happy with it.
Let that be our legacy.
Oh, this is a cute question from Lindsay. How did you two meet, and what was it like meeting in person for the first time?
Oh, yeah. I guess we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, but our specific meeting is kind of hilarious. So what
happened?
Yeah, you're right. So as we mentioned before, we went to VidCon, we met there. Pretty much me and 5 or 4 other people got together, met at the airport, or not at the airport, at the hotel. And we were like, where's Ariel? Like, it's taking her a long time. We were starting to get a little worried. We're like, where is she at? Did her flight come in? Is she lost? And so we eventually figured out she was okay, and we knew that she was going to be here soon.
What happened?
We were texting CJ. We were like, CJ was like, Ariel hasn't gotten back to us yet. And so we were like looking up your flight to see if
it got delayed.
It got delayed. And so we figured out that everything was okay. But we were like,
This was funny because this is so long ago that I don't think I had roaming on my phone.
No, that's the thing. None of us had cell phones that could be used when we weren't in Wi-Fi.
In Canada. Yeah, exactly. So we were in the States and so our phones didn't work and we were 18.
Yeah.
So we didn't, I bet you we didn't even know about roaming.
No, exactly.
And so we would only be able to text and communicate.
I didn't even have an iPhone, I don't think.
No, I took my iPad.
Yeah, I had an iPad and a flip phone. I remember that distinctly.
Yeah, same. So it was just like, we didn't, I didn't get my first iPhone until I was 19, almost 20.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that. So I definitely had some form of a slide phone.
Right. Oh yeah, it might have been a slide phone, not a flip phone. But anyway, so we were like, Ariel's lost, but by the time we were like, knew you were coming, we're like, let's do something a little fun for her. Let's do something to like welcome her in. And so we had a little Bluetooth speaker or something, and we queued up Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid. And we all hid. And so because we peeked at the curtain and saw you walking, and we're like, we knew that you would have your little key and you would get into the room. So she walks into the room and you can't see any of us. Yeah. And there's like a couple of seconds of delay until the music started. And then all of a sudden you just hear da 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 da, and then we filmed it too, so you can just see Ariel kind of go like start dancing a little, and then we all jumped out, and I tackled her with a hug. I absolutely sprinted. I was like, I'm getting in that first hug. So nice. So we had a very joyful, like silly, beautiful first meeting, and then like you said, we just went on to have a really wonderful week. I fully lost my voice that week because we were screaming and laughing and having so much fun. We went to IHOP. That was the first thing we did after we got you.
We went to IHOP.
Yeah.
God, the memories.
It was beautiful. I know. God, I remember being 18.
I remember in that moment, I was like, am I being bullied? Like, because the Under the Sea music, like, it's The Little Mermaid. Yeah. I'm like, I could be being bullied right now. I was like, am I being bullied or is this loving? Yeah. And I decided to choose that it was loving and lean in and start dancing. I remember there was a moment of like, what's happening? And I was like, I'm just gonna play it cool.
Yeah, we just wanted to be happy.
I knew it, and instantly I knew it was like a funny prank.
Yeah, but it was really rushed. We just came up with it in those like few minutes that we had. Okay, Anna says, here's a hypothetical. Say you're going to a new friend's house for the first time and you see they have a big bookshelf. What books and or authors would be yellow or even red flags, causing some reconsideration of a potential friendship?
This has happened before.
Ooh.
Where I've gone to people's houses and I see certain things and I'm like, odd.
Oh.
I guess Jordan Peterson is a really big red flag.
Yeah.
Or I'm just like, okay. Maybe they bought it before he went truly insane. Yeah. There was a period where he wasn't like as insane.
Right.
Now he's just completely lost.
Yeah.
The entire plot. There's no part of his plot that makes any sense anymore.
No, I like that answer.
What else? I can't think of it.
I
That's
don't know,
like the one.
business books.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess these are a little boring.
That's just not someone I would maybe be friends with.
Yeah.
Most of my friends like fiction and like memoirs and fun, happy things.
That's funny.
Yeah. That's all I got.
I can't think of another
That's all
one.
I got. Okay, Tilia says, which classic authors have you read multiple books by after liking the first one? Do you have any that you really want to read more stuff from, but you've just read their most famous book? Specifically to me, have you read any more books from F. Scott Fitzgerald, or do you want to?
That's funny.
Because obviously we know you're into Orwell and you've read lots.
That's funny that came up because
I know.
we talked about this.
We've talked about that. Every time I see an F. Scott Fitzgerald book, I'm like, ha, look at this. I haven't read that. So no, I haven't read anything other than The Great Gatsby, and I would say that those are fully Acorn books, but I don't own any of them yet. I'm waiting to find like perfect,
You
beautiful
don't own
editions.
any other books by him? You don't even own any?
I don't even own them.
Fascinating.
I don't know. I just haven't found the perfect copies
Yeah,
yet.
there's some cool copies though.
That's the thing. Like I've seen a lot of copies of like The Side of Paradise and stuff like that, and I'm like, it's just not quite right. If I'm gonna have only, it's funny with Gatsby, I'll buy anything. But for his other books, I'm like, I don't know. Do I want them to all match each other? Do I want them to all be mismatched but very beautiful? Like I haven't figured out my situation yet. But I also know that I'm probably gonna read them when I'm like, I don't know, in my 50s. I just feel like I'm not gonna read them for a long time. I'm not in a rush to read them.
That's fascinating.
Sort of like how you are with your Orwell. Like there's only so many, and you're not in a rush to read them. Like F. Scott Fitzgerald doesn't have that many books, so I'm not in a rush to get through them. And I love Gatsby so much that I could just happily reread that.
I will say I'm feeling a little bit more completionist-y lately.
Oh, really?
Where I'm like, I just want to read Mansfield Park. Even though I know it's going to suck, I'm just like, I just want to read it and then be able to say like, yes, I have read all of her books.
Right.
And then same with Orwell a little bit, where I'm just like, I feel like it's time to at least read a bunch more. Because I'm like, when people ask me like, what did you think of Road to Wigan Pier? I'm like, I hate that I haven't read them.
Yeah, I feel like you're kind of like, not an expert, but you know what I mean? Like
I know a lot.
You're a person who knows a lot about Orwell.
Mr. Orwell and about Lucy Maud Montgomery now. I had this epic moment, not to flex on the pod, but I had this epic moment when I was in Lucy Maud Montgomery's birthplace.
Oh, yeah.
And my friends were looking at the journals. My friends turned to me and they're like, Ariel, do you happen to know, and they could tell how insane this question was, which journal we should get, because we want to read about the time when the book was being published for the first time. And I was like, oh yeah, you need 1905 to 1907, so you need the first volume. And I didn't know. And I was like, whoa. I know a little too much about Lucy Maud Montgomery.
That's so funny.
And so I like knowing a lot about the author and about like the texts for the authors that I love the most. So I am a little like, I want to read more by Orwell, and I want to read more by Lucy Maud Montgomery, and I want to finish Austen.
That's really cool.
Yeah, those are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, I don't really have any other authors like that I'm like, gotta go all in on yet.
Yeah.
But maybe it'll come.
Yeah.
Okay, the final question
Ooh.
is maybe the most important question of all.
Interesting.
This is from Crystal.
Oh,
Crystal, you know what you asked. This is a question to me. Crystal says, I'm curious how your music ventures are going. Is the Shrek track still cooking?
I thought you were going to ask like a really emotional...
I know.
I was like, she's going to ask like a really emotional and important question.
When I said that these are in no specific order, I literally just like screenshotted them and emailed them to myself. This is the way it happened. So... To answer your question, I haven't worked on my music in months, but I was just telling Connor about this yesterday because we were talking about making music, and I was like, I think it's time for me to put that pot back to boil, start cooking again, because I do really want to make my Shrek song, and I've made like only a few seconds of it, so it's basically nothing right now, so I have like the whole journey to still go through. I'm not like at a creative, wall or anything like that. I just kind of didn't feel like it for a long time. Because it was summer, it was hot, I wanted to go outside. Yeah. But now I'm ready to snuggle up with Shrek and start making that song again.
I really want that song.
I know, I want the song so bad. A lot of people want the song.
Even if it's bad, I just really want it.
I know, that's the thing. I know that we're going to like release it in some capacity when it's done because so many people now want it.
Yeah.
There's like a bit of a Shrek fandom in our Discord, which I love. So I know that it will be shared. When it's ready, you guys will hear about it.
Okay.
So
that's important. The people need to know.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for all of your questions that you submitted, but also just generally, truly, genuinely very thankful. Thank you for listening to the podcast for 5 years.
It's wild.
Like, the podcast I think would have been fun, even if we always stayed like a really tiny podcast. But the fact that it grew and we have so many of you guys out there that listen every week is truly so meaningful to us. And I don't think we would have had the joie de vivre to keep going if it wasn't for all of you guys listening. So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's ever shared the podcast, because that really is the way that these things grow, is just you texting it to someone and being like, hey, I think you would like this, or posting it on your stories and being like, hey, I love this podcast. Like, that's how it grows. So thank you to everyone who's ever shared it, and thank you to everyone who's ever supported our Patreon or bought our merch, because those are the two things that make it financially viable for Raylene to have taken a day off of her actual job to do this job, and for me to carve out time out of my video making to do this job. So we're just very grateful to you all, and we hope you enjoyed this special episode. Happy 5 years, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.